All right. We're working on something that's going to feel a bit different, but it has a lot of the same ideas today. This is lesson 1.10. I believe this is the last one in our unit, but I'm not sure 100%. This one is called the coordinate plane. We're going to be getting into some graph paper, graphing. As you can tell, I have my graph paper here, so we'll be working with that today. Everything above this first squiggly line right here, this is all stuff that you should get in your notes somewhere. So either pause right now, jot this down, or just go along as I'm describing it. But our first word here is our coordinate plane. So when I hear the word coordinate plane, what I'm really talking about is just your typical graph. That's what you're going to imagine it as. It's the intersection of two number lines. It's going to look something like this, something like this. It's going to be pretty typical, like something you've probably seen plenty of times. Your coordinate plane is that area where you're going to be graphing. You're going to be putting points, be making shapes, things like that. Next, we have our x-axis and y-axis. My favorite way to remember the difference between the two: x is the horizontal number line, goes from left to right. Y is the vertical number line, goes up and down. I know this is sometimes hard to remember, so my tip for remembering it is think of the y. The stem of the y goes up and down. The stem of the y goes up and down just like the y-axis. Y-axis goes up and down. X-axis goes from side to side. Obviously, goes from 0 infinitely in both directions, both ways. Stuff you've probably heard before. Next is our origin. Our origin, that just means where the two lines intersect. More often than not, you will see this at 0, 0. I don't think there'll be any times this year that this won't be at 0, 0 for you. Yeah, so that's the origin. Just think of it as 0, 0. We'll get a little bit more into that later. Right here I have a small diagram of quadrants. There's 4 quadrants on every coordinate plane. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, here's a little helpful tip I'll put in there too. The ordered pair, which is what we'll talk about next, is going to be positive, positive there. Here the ordered pair is going to be negative, positive. Here it's going to be negative, negative. And here it's going to be positive, negative. That might not make sense right now. That's okay. All I have to know is it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the 4 coordinates. Jot down this little diagram. I think that'll help you out. Our last vocab word is our ordered pair. This is something that you're going to be familiar with. Our ordered pair is our x-coordinate and our y-coordinate. It'll look something like -5, -4. All it's telling you is it's giving you a location to point on our coordinate plane. So if you see -5, -4, that means your x-coordinate, you're going to go -5. Your y-coordinate, you're going to go -4. We always write our ordered pairs as x, y. You'll never, ever see y, x. That is not how you do an ordered pair. X always comes first, y is second. Remember, our x's are our horizontal axis, our y's are our vertical. So we're going to start by finding where we are on horizontal and then match it up with vertical. We'll get some practice with that here in a second. All right, moving right into it. So make sure if you haven't yet, pause those, get that all written down. Moving on here. I know this is stuff you're familiar with, but we're going to do a little refresher here. So we're going to start by looking at this graph over here. Can I zoom in on that? All right, so our goal here is to name these points and say what quadrant they are in. If you have your little quadrant diagram that you should next to you on your notes, this shouldn't be too hard for you. We're going to start with A. A is in which quadrant? Quadrant 2. I know this is quadrant 2. I look at my diagram. I'm just going to label the quadrants real quick over here for myself. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know A is in quadrant 2. How do I figure out where this point is? Well, we start with our x-axis. Start with our x-axis here, and I see that the origin is right here. It went over -1, -2. Remember, our x is horizontal, our y is vertical. We know that because the y stem is vertical. So I see -2 on my x, and on my y, it went up, +1. A is at -2, 1. Moving on to B, and I'm also going to write in there quadrant 2. B, I'm looking at, I already labeled it. Got my 4th quadrant down here. if you look at your diagram, you can also see that my quadrant 2 is negative, positive, and A is negative, positive. So we know that one works out. B, if we look at our quadrant up here, we have positive, negative. We'll see how this one works out. So I see on the X is where we always start. X, Y, always start with X. We went over 1, 2, and went down -3. So my X, it went over 2, down -3, positive, negative, just like I said. And finally, C. Oh, and this one is in quadrant 4. And C, we have in quadrant 1. You know, our quadrant 1 is positive, positive. So we start with our X always, go over to 3, and go up 3. See where those line up with 3, 3. So we know that C is 3, 3. Zoom back out here a bit. And all right. So we just found where those points were. Our next step is to graph some points. So right here they give me R, and they tell me it's at 3, -4.5. And I know it goes X, Y. So I'm going to start by finding 3 on my X. 1, 2, 3 right here. And -4.5 on my Y. 1, 2, 3, 4.5 right there. I'm in quadrant 4, and I can just label that as R. All right, perfect. On to the next one, S. We start with our X always, -4.5. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And we go 3 for Y. We're going up because our positives are up. 1, 2, 3. And right there we have S. All right, moving on to the next side. We have, not next side, new paper. All right, this next one we have graph a figure with these vertices. So we're going to graph these points, then we're going to combine them to make a figure. I know my Y's are first, or my X's are first, my Y's are second. I'm going to label these 4 points using that. So I'm looking at my X's. I have T is 1. So I got 1 right here. And its Y is -2, which I know is up and down. Right here we have T. Perfect. Our next one we have U. We start with our X is -3. 1. Oh, I messed this up a little bit. See how I have that a little too close? It'll be okay though. All I gotta do is move this one. This should be where my -1 is. This should be where my -2 is. All right. So we're moving 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, because I see I have -2 for my Y, and that is U. I can already see the first line right here of my square. If you want to connect that now, otherwise you can wait. V, we start with our X, we have -3, 1, 2, 3, and our Y, we have up 2, 1, 2. There's our V, connect those, and we can probably guess where our last one's going to be, but we're going to graph it out anyway. We got 1, we're going over 1, up 2, 1, 2, blammo. And there's our square, just like that. All right, last one I have for you. Graph a figure with these vertices. We're doing the same thing. We got our X, Y. I always like to write this right next to mine just so I don't forget. I recommend you do it if that's something that you struggle with. Starting with K, we have 3, 1, 2, 3. Y up 1 right there. Next one we have, label that. We have L, -2.5. So we're starting with our X always, 1, 2.5, and move up 1 to right there. And finally we have M, -2, 1, 2, and -4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Got M here, L here. Connect those together. And we got a little triangle. Yeah, so that's a little intro on graphing. Big things to remember are the first part of this page. One last chance to get those notes down, screenshot that or pause it so you can get those recorded in your own notes because you can use those on your tests and quizzes. Yeah, let's get graphing.